Boys, girls, babes, welcome back to the Janaea Talks Caps podcast. As always, thank you all so much for tuning in today. And just a quick reminder, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast if you haven't already. We are available across pretty much all major platforms now, with those including but not limited to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, TuneIn, Podcast Addict, Deezer, etc., etc., etc. And I just wanted to say that we really do appreciate all of the interest and all of the love that we have been getting lately. It has truly been amazing. So again, thank you all so much for your continued support. We appreciate it so much. You all are awesome. And so today, it is going to be a fun episode as we get to talk about 3 straight wins for the good guys against division rival and possible playoff opponent, the New York Islanders. So 2 of the 3 wins for the Caps came at Nassau Coliseum on Long Island, where the Isles were previously 19-2-2 before the Caps came in and beat them twice in back-to-back games on the Isles' home ice. So game 1 of the 3-game mini-series, that's what we're going to call it, between the Caps and the Isles, as this did feel pretty much like a playoff series. Game 1, like I said, Caps and the Isles, they had actually entered this mini series, if you will, with identical records, and in a 2-way tie for first place in the uber tough East Division. So game number 1, it was a 1-0 shootout win for the Caps on Long Island, with Ilya Samsonov getting the shutout and then stopping 2 out of 3 Islanders' attempts in the shootout as well. Game number 2, much more high-scoring affair for sure. Game number 2, it was a dominating 6-3 win for the Caps. Again, in the Islanders' home barn on Long Island, in which the Caps owned the Islanders in basically every category and all over the ice. The Caps outscored the Islanders 6-0 at even strength in this game. The Caps, by the way, they have scored more touchdowns this season than any other team in the NHL, and they are leading the league in even strength goals, which is something that we know bodes very well for the playoffs, where there are typically far fewer power plays, and even strength play is always so huge for a team's success. The Caps are the best in the league at even strength, so that bodes obviously very well for them as we, draw ever closer to the playoffs here. So for what it's worth as well, even though the Caps are an even strength juggernaut, their power play certainly ain't too shabby either. It is second in the entire NHL behind only the Carolina Hurricanes. So the Caps obviously scoring goals in bunches this season, just like every season basically in the Alex Ovechkin era. But yeah, they're scoring a lot of goals this season. Like I said, not only, at even strength, but on the power play as well. They're doing it in all situations. So, great sign for the Caps. So they outscore the Isles 6-0 at even strength in game number 2 of this 3-game mini series, with the Isles scoring twice on the power play and once while shorthanded. And with Islanders coach, Barry Trotz, referring to his own Islanders goals as being lucky, which I do agree with. I mean, the 2 power play goals were both great bounces for the Isles, and just unlucky really for the Caps, who have been generally stellar on the penalty kill this season. And the shorty that the Islanders scored as well, Samsonov would probably tell you that he'd definitely like to have that one back. It was basically just a slap shot from just inside the blue line, straight on, no real screen or anything, and no deflection. He definitely would like to have that one back. And that was all the Islanders got. And Barry Trotz was not happy about it. He wasn't very pleased at all with his team's performance, as the Caps basically ran them out of their own building in game number 2. And again, like Nassau Coliseum has been a place for basically every team in the East Division, aside from the Caps, and basically every team in the NHL, aside from the Caps, in seasons past. It's been a very tough place for basically all other teams to play, but the Caps, for whatever reason, they seem to like playing there. So virtually the same thing happened again in game number 3, in that it was another dominating performance for the Washington Capitals, although the score didn't really indicate it. The score didn't really match up with what was happening out there on the ice, as the Caps would again win by a shutout. This time the shutout was by the Caps' other young stud goaltender, Calder Trophy candidate Vitek Vanecek. But the 1-0 score, which the Caps would eventually win by, like I said, really didn't do justice to just how dominant the Caps again were during this game. They outshot the Isles 33-18, even though the Isles had the majority of the power plays. And really, from the drop of the puck, the Caps were just a far better team once again. They scored on their first shot of the game for the second straight game, and just never really looked back. They never really gave the Isles anything at all, really, all night long. So overall, the Caps take 6 of 8 from the Isles in the season series. That does wrap up their season series. That's all the games that they will play against each other in the regular season. Quite possible that they could meet in the playoffs. But yeah, with these most recent 3 straight wins over the Isles, the Caps have opened up a 5-point lead on the Isles in the standings and in the race for first place. As I mentioned, the Caps and the Isles, they had identical 29, 13, and 4 records coming into this 3-game miniseries. But the Caps, they gave the Isles only 1 out of a possible 6 points, and took 6 out of 6 themselves. So now, as a result, the Caps now sit alone in first place with a record of 32, 13, and 4. While the Isles are still stuck on the 29 wins that they had when the Caps first came to town last Thursday. And I think what was really most impressive for the Caps during these 3 straight wins against the Isles, and really what's been most impressive for them all season long under Peter Laviolette, is the sheer depth of this team at every position. And not just the depth on paper, but the fact that the depth actually steps up and delivers on the ice as well. Because you can be deep on paper all you want, but it doesn't mean jack shit if that depth doesn't deliver on the ice. So these guys do, and they do it in spades. And obviously, you've all heard by now that Caps captain and probable best goal scorer in NHL history by the time all is said and done, that being, of course, Alex Ovechkin. He's out with a lower body injury. It does seem more precautionary than anything else, kind of resting it up for the playoffs. As we know, he's pretty much been playing through a lower body injury, all season long, pretty much. So probably a good idea, and probably in their best interest to continue to rest it, and hopefully nothing of real concern there. But he has, like I said, missed the past 2 games. And so this is really like a pretty perfect example, right? Like the Caps, they won the last 2 games without Alex Ovechkin, huge games against a division rival with first place and home ice advantage in the playoffs on the line. Home ice advantage that definitely means a lot to these New York Islanders, by the way, as they are, like I said, almost unbeatable at home, but yet they're very pedestrian when playing on the road. The road record is 10, 12, and 2 compared to 19, 3, and 3 at home. So yeah, you would better believe that the Islanders want that home ice advantage. It's very important to them, and they wanted this 3-game miniseries against the Caps with first place on the line. That first place, or at least that home ice advantage, may be more important to the Isles in particular than it would be to anyone else. As like I said, they actually have a losing record on the road this season. So the Caps, for their part, are very good at home and away from home. So I think, home ice advantage probably matters less to them, being that they are, so good on the road as well. But yeah, this 3-game miniseries with first place on the line is probably more important to the Isles than to anyone else. And yet it was the Caps who played like they want it, like they wanted the games, like they want first place, like they want to be the best, like they want to send a big message with the playoffs just around the corner. And send it they did. 3 straight wins, including 2 shutouts by 2 different goalies. The Caps did not allow a single even strength goal against during this 3-game miniseries versus the Isles. Not a single one. 0 even strength goals for the Islanders through all 3 games. That is just ridiculous. And overall, Ovechkin, he had also missed 4 games earlier this season when he was placed on the NHL's COVID protocols list. So overall, the Caps, without their leading goal scorer in Ovechkin this season, they're 5-0-1 without him. They've won 5 out of 6 games without him, and they haven't lost in regulation. And again, he is their leading goal scorer again this season. So just finding ways to win, even without your top guys. Like when top line forward Tom Wilson was handed that bullshit 7-game suspension from the league for his hit on Brandon Carlo, the Caps went 7-0-0 without him as well. There's been a lot of overlap with different injuries and COVID protocols and Wilson suspension and everything else. The Caps have had multiple different key players out of the lineup at the same time on multiple occasions. They have the 3rd most man games lost in the entire NHL this season, and yet they still sit in first place, even having gone through all of that adversity. They've battled through it. They've won the games, and they continue to come out on top every time. So as you can probably guess, this all bodes extremely well for the playoffs, where there are always injuries, and now of course there's COVID to worry about as well. So having the depth on paper to begin with, and then as I said, that depth actually stepping up on the ice when called upon is even more important this season than ever before. As like I said, due to the fact that we're in a pandemic and things are going to be unpredictable, there can and probably will be absences that you weren't counting on or expecting. Anything can happen this season. Anyone can end up missing time out of nowhere. We know that a guy like Alex Ovechkin, for example, while he can't actually get COVID because he has the antibodies, it's still good to know that the Caps can go 5-0-1 without him in case of the rare event that he does get injured and can't play. The Caps are super deep at every position, and it is showing. It's showing up on the ice, and it's showing up in the standings. The best goal scorer of all time is injured. So you insert 24-year-old Daniel Sprong into the lineup. He scores 3 goals in 2 games, including back-to-back game winners. You're missing a top 4 defenseman in Justin Schultz. Oh, no problem. Here, let's insert Trevor Van Riemsdyk into the lineup. He'll slide right into that top 4 so that you don't have to mess up the other defensive pairings. He'll play almost 20 minutes a night. And he'll go +3 over 3 games against the Islanders, and he'll add an assist for you as well. Not to mention, he'll be all over Matthew Barzal and keeping him off of the scoreboard as well. And he'll also nail him with a hit and throw him down to the ice cleanly and therefore unworthy of a penalty, I might add, to both stop the Islanders' rush dead in its tracks late in a game in which the Caps are holding a 1-goal lead. And also to send a message to Barzal and his Islanders teammates, one which says quite simply, get the fuck out of here, bro. Van Riemsdyk, he was so good, particularly in this most recent win, in this 1-0 shutout for the Caps at the end of the game. He was so good. Like, he was out there, like I said, against Barzal, really just didn't give Barzal or any of his Islanders teammates anything. And like I said, playing physically, all of the Caps are doing that. We'll get to that. But yeah, depth up front, at forward, depth on defense, and you want depth in net as well, right? So here's 2 young studs in Ilya Samsonov and Vitek Vanecek. They will each post a shutout for you against the division rival Islanders in some of the biggest games of the year. Thursday, of course, a shutout for Samsonov, and 5 days later on Tuesday, a shutout for Vanecek. So that will do, pig. The Caps have got the depth part covered. They've also got the will and the effort part of things covered, as we could see clearly in this 3-game miniseries versus the Islanders. The Caps were all over them, man. Like, it was awesome to watch. Insanely fun hockey games to be watching if you're a Caps fan when the Caps are playing like that. And they started out, they started out kind of slow in the first game of this mini-series, just in that one first period. But you also have to remember that the Caps had been off for 4 days straight before that game, so it was a pretty long break for them, and obviously, that frequently makes any team rusty out of the gate, which the Caps definitely were. But yeah, aside from that, one first period in game number 1. This 3-game miniseries was all Caps, baby. Like, Joby and Locker actually said it on air just the other day. But, it definitely appeared as though sometime between that first period of game number 1 and the other 8+ periods that followed, because there was one overtime period in there as well. But sometime in between there, sometime during that first intermission of the 3-game set, in between that first and second period of the first game, the Caps definitely figured out something about how to play against this Islanders team. And that's a great sign moving into the playoffs, where, like I said, there's like a 50-50 chance that you're going to face the Islanders at some point in the playoffs. But it's really been night and day for the Caps against the Isles this season under Peter Laviolette, compared to what it looked like last season when Todd Reirden was still the Caps coach. So, I really don't think that Caps fans should be afraid of facing the Islanders at this point. It just looks totally different to me this season with the new coach than it did last season under Todd Reirden. Peter Laviolette is not Todd Reirden. Peter Laviolette is not going to get schooled by Barry Trotz in a playoff series the way that Todd Reirden did. So I think when you factor in that, that the coaching matchup is now even, rather than being heavily in favor of the Isles when Todd Reirden was the Caps coach, I think when you factor that in, and then when you look at the rosters of these two teams, I definitely like the Caps' chances. So I wouldn't be too worried about it if you're a Caps fan. Like, shit can always hit the fan. That's always true. But I like the Caps' chances in a 7-game series against the Isles now that we have Peter Laviolette as the coach instead of Todd Reirden. And I like the Caps' chances in a 7-game series against anyone, for that matter. But yeah, like we were talking about the Caps' effort here, their will to win, their will to be the best. How about killing off 3 straight Islanders power plays in the third period while holding a 1-goal lead? There was one of those penalty kills where I literally stood up in my living room and was clapping at John Carlson's effort in particular. Like, you guys will probably remember the PK that I'm talking about. But yeah, there was one PK in particular where he had been out there, Carlson had, for basically the entire 2 minutes of the Islanders power play. He was completely gassed, and yet near the end of it, he still found the will and the energy to nail the Islanders player that had the puck. He takes the puck from him and clears it down the ice. So it was a beast of a play. Like I said, I was up clapping in my living room, and it essentially ended the Islanders power play, as by the time that they got back and got the puck back from their own end, their power play was basically over at that point. So Zdeno Chara on the 4-on-3 penalty kill. Again, like, all of this is while holding a 1-goal lead. Chara is a complete beast out there. And how about Chara as well avenging new teammate Michael Raffl after Raffl took a kind of a dirty hit from behind into the boards by Islanders forward Matt Martin. The officials eventually had to jump in to save Martin from what was about to be a certain knockout and likely concussion, as Chara had landed about 6 or 7 punches straight to Martin's head when the officials came to Martin's aid. Martin was just kind of turtling at that point. So that will teach you not to take liberties when Zdeno Chara is roaming nearby. And I love him sticking up for his teammates. He's fit right in here so nicely. It's awesome. You can tell that he just really loves being a Washington Capital, being a part of this team. He loves his teammates, and he said as much in his interviews as well. But yeah, you can definitely see it on the ice as well. The proof is in the pudding, as they say. But yeah, man, like, this 3-game set versus the Isles was all about effort for the Caps. The will to win, like I said, the will to be the best, the will to come out on top, the will to send a message. Everyone is playing physical. They were really hammering the Isles. They were winning basically every puck battle. They had the puck basically all series long as a result, and they had the Isles hemmed in their own zone for over 2 minutes at a time on several occasions and had them completely gassed. It was a thing of beauty, a work of art. Hang it up in the Louvre. And I just want to make mention of one more thing just before we sign off here for the day as well, and that is, how good has Dmitry Orlov been for these last couple of months here? Like, seriously, he is just by far the best all-around defenseman on this team. And honestly, I don't know how anyone can see it differently right now at this point. Like, every game, he's leading the Caps in every important defensive category, whether it be blocked shots, takeaways, hits, you name it. He's doing it all. He's playing over 20 minutes a night. He's matching up against the opposition's best players, and yet he's a plus 11, and he's got the best advanced stats on the team, and he's putting up a ton of offense as well. 7 goals and 16 points now in 44 games played for the defenseman. He did miss some time while on the NHL's COVID protocols list as well, but man, is he heating up now. Most of his points have come over the last couple of months here, over these last 20 games or so. He just recently finished up a 5-game point streak. And like I said, his defense has been incredible over the last couple of months. Really, it's just been a joy to watch. He's also almost never turning the puck over, like literally almost never, which is why it baffles me. I got to get this in here. It's why it baffles me when some fans talk about him as if this is still his rookie season when he was prone to turnovers. Like, live in the present, people, not in the past, okay? Come forward into the present. It's a beautiful place where Dmitry Orlov, is a stud, both offensively and defensively. He's been amazing, so I just had to get that in there, like I said, before the end of the episode. Anyways, that's all we've got for you today, folks. The Caps have, of course, another 2 big games coming up this week against the rival Pittsburgh Penguins on Thursday and then again on Saturday. So we will get ready for those. And again, as always, thank you all very much for listening. We really appreciate you. And again, I know I mentioned it at the top of the episode, but do make sure to subscribe to our podcast if you haven't already. We are available, like I said, on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on Google Podcasts, on iHeartRadio, on Stitcher, on TuneIn, on Podcast Addict, on Deezer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on and on and on. Pretty much anywhere and everywhere that you would get your podcast from, we are on there. So you can find us basically anywhere. So subscribe, share us with your family and your friends and your fellow Caps fans, your fellow hockey fans in general. We don't discriminate. And we will talk some hockey, babes. Until next time, Caps fans, you stay classy, stay healthy, stay safe, and as always, let's go Caps.